The National Desk, America's News, now.
Tornado watch as more severe weather threatens parts of Texas and the central United States. Could a twister hit the same city on back-to-back days? Bribery on Capitol Hill. Another congressman faces federal indictment. What they're accused of and how much money is said to have exchanged hands. And then how an hour-long aerial battle over the Arizona desert could be the beginning of the next generation of Air Force combat. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Right now, we are following multiple severe storm cells over parts of the South and Mid-Atlantic region, as well as central Nebraska. The National Weather Service warning today that the west central Texas region could see more hail and a few tornadoes again tonight. A tornado watch now in effect for parts of Texas until 10 p.m. Central Time. And it comes as multiple tornadoes were confirmed near Abilene, Texas yesterday, leaving houses and properties destroyed. There are no reports of casualties, and the exact damage at this point is unknown. But over the weekend, a slight risk of severe thunderstorms across parts of West Texas and southeastern New Mexico. Perhaps a few tornadoes could occur across parts of the southern high plains Saturday afternoon into the evening. Week 3 of former President Donald Trump's hush money trial has wrapped up. Prosecutors questioned former Trump's aide, Hope Hicks, about the 2016 campaign and Michael Cohen's hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Hicks was also asked about the Access Hollywood tape release, which she said Trump's campaign thought was, quote, a crisis. Trump spoke afterwards, claiming that the New York District Attorney's Office has been, quote, after us for years. The trial will resume on Monday. Meanwhile, the Security and Exchange Commission has charged B.F. Braggers with the accounting firm for the Trump Media and Technology Group of widespread fraud and fabricating audit documentation. The firm and its owner have agreed to pay $14 million in fines. The Trump Media Group is not accused of any wrongdoing here, but must find a new accounting group, which they have said they will. And tonight, more arrests on New York City campuses. Students detained at NYU and the New School after the NYPD was called in to help disperse encampments of protesters calling for an end to the war in Gaza and for their schools to cut financial ties with Israel. Many of the protesters walked away peacefully when given the option by police. But in the end, 56 arrests today between those two schools, adding to a staggering number of arrests that we have seen since just April 18th. 2,000 people arrested across campuses from pro-Palestinian anti-war protesters. Protests popping up across campuses, coast to coast. However, protest encampments on at least 4 different campuses, university campuses, they have now ended amicably. Students voluntarily packing up at Northwestern, Brown, Rutgers, and the University of Minnesota after administrators found diplomatic alternatives to using police force. The agreements vary by school, but range from providing scholarships and aid for Palestinian students to the promise of reviewing university investments in Israel. Here's what the president of Northwestern had to say.
We entered into a dialogue with the students to address their real needs in a way that we can make our university better. So we are not divesting. What we are doing is providing more transparency with regard to our investments.
As the protests continue to disrupt campuses coast to coast, some conservative voices attributing the fast spread of demonstrations to what's being seen on TikTok and an influence by China. Correspondent Matt Gelka with more.
Campus protests took a noticeable and aggressive turn this week. Some protests went from mostly peaceful tent encampments to building takeovers and campus damage. Clashes with police forces around the country led to hundreds of arrests. China expert Gordon Chang thinks the Chinese Communist Party is stirring the pot on TikTok.
Well, China is using the curation algorithm of TikTok to foment these protests. We know of the Hamas videos on that platform, 96.5% of them support the terrorist group.
There's an estimated 170 million Americans on the controversial app. A Pew Research study shows the number of people under 30 who say they get their news from the app has almost quadrupled in the past 4 years, going from about 9% in 2020 to 32% last year. Chang says China has targeted users in the past, and they're doing it again.
They use big data to identify Americans likely to participate in Antifa and Black Lives Matter protests, and then they sent them tailor-made videos on TikTok on how to riot. That is an act of war. China did it in 2020. It's doing it now.
Fears over China accessing American data and manipulating the algorithm have been chief concerns for the FBI.
The different kinds of influence operations you're describing are extraordinarily difficult to detect, which is part of what makes the national security concerns represented by TikTok so significant.
Other experts warn the Chinese government is also using fake accounts on the app to further divide and weaken the country.
China has a very deliberate strategy to embed propaganda into social media.
And Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in April the U.S. had already seen evidence China has attempted to meddle in the 2024 election. It came after China's president promised President Joe Biden the country would not do so. Amira?
And Matt, what else are we seeing in terms of other countries? How are they seizing on the moment here?
Well, there are multiple countries definitely trying to seize on this nationwide turmoil. According to the New York Times, in just the past 2 weeks, state-run media outlets in Russia, China, and Iran have posted around 400 articles about the protests, many meant to paint the picture that America is in disarray. Amira?
All right, Matt Gelka live from D.C. for us. Thank you as always. Congressman Henry Cuellar and his wife have been indicted by the DOJ on conspiracy and bribery charges related to ties between U.S. business leaders and the former Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan. That's according to the Justice Department, which says that from 2014 to 2015, the Texas Democrat and his wife accepted nearly $600,000 in bribes from an Azerbaijan-controlled energy company and also a bank in Mexico. In return, Cuellar agreed to advance the interests of the country and bank in the U.S. by influencing legislation and giving speeches. Now, the congressman denies any wrongdoing by him or his wife and has said that he always spoke with the House Ethics Committee about any gifts that were given, but he will take a leave of absence as the ranking member of the House Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee while the matter is ongoing. It is unclear if he will still vote on other matters before the House. The bowling alley in Lewiston, Maine, where 8 people were killed in a shooting last October, is now open again. The owners didn't want to reopen the business at first, but changed their minds when the community rallied behind them. It's been remodeled and has a table with pictures of the victims inside and bowling pins with their names and the names of those killed at a nearby bar and pool hall. Classes at Garter Elementary School in Waterloo, Illinois, just south of St. Louis, were temporarily suspended today after the school was evacuated when a dozen students became ill. The students were practicing a school play when some complained of lightheadedness and others fainted. Classes resumed after first responders ruled out a gas leak in the school, but it's still unknown what caused the temporary illnesses. Officials in Hawaii are suing major cell carriers over failures to send warning alerts during the Maui wildfires. In a lawsuit, Maui County officials say residents never received the alerts sent to cell phones warning them to evacuate. The county is also suing the Hawaiian Electric Company for not shutting off power despite dry conditions and high winds. Maui County is a defendant in multiple lawsuits over its own emergency response. The U.S. Department of Justice is warning Iowa's governor that she has until Tuesday to pull Iowa's new immigration law, or the DOJ will take Iowa to court. The law signed earlier this month is similar to the Texas law that allows state officials to arrest and deport non-legal migrants. Texas has not been able to enforce that law due to lawsuits by the administration. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds said today the only reason Iowa enacted the law was because the Biden administration refuses to enforce the federal laws on the books. Affordable Care Act coverage is being extended to DACA recipients, or people brought to this country illegally as kids but are protected from deportation. The new Biden administration policy ensures these recipients can enroll in a qualified health plan through the insurance marketplace or a basic health program. The Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services estimate at least 100,000 people without insurance can enroll. Multiple law enforcement officials are injured after two separate shootouts in California last night. Police say a Placer County deputy was shot and hospitalized after trying to talk to a driver in a suspicious van. That suspect was shot and killed. And two officers in San Jose say they were shot by a man while responding to a 911 call. The FBI has charged a New York man with using a skimming device at 19 different Walmart stores across 4 states to steal credit card information. According to the criminal filing, Romario Serban gained access to more than 27,000 credit cards in 1 week alone from July 2nd to July 8th of last year. 15 of the 19 stores were in upstate New York. The others were in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. Coming up, a fresh jobs report brings good news for the future of interest rates. We're going to take a closer look at the numbers. Then AI pilots are here. An Air Force fighter jet controlled by artificial intelligence just debuted. What the military wants to do next. And later, how a Nashville combat veteran is helping other vets rediscover themselves and find new purpose. We're back in just 90 seconds. Tonight, an ultimatum from Israel. Hamas has 1 week to strike a ceasefire deal, or the IDF will begin a planned military operation in Rafah. This, according to what Egyptian officials have told the Wall Street Journal. Fears mounting as the UN today said an Israeli incursion in Rafah would put the lives of hundreds of thousands of Gazans at risk and serve a huge blow to aid operations in the region, which are so desperately needed. Rafah is the southernmost city in Gaza and is serving as a makeshift home to over 1 million Gazans who became homeless as a result of the military bombardment there. Right now, CIA Director Bill Burns is in Cairo for truce negotiations. Unclear at this point whether Hamas will accept the current proposal for a temporary ceasefire that would secure the release of 30 hostages over the course of 40 days. The stalled negotiations coming as the 38th hostage in Gaza is confirmed dead. The Hostage and Missing Families Forum announcing 49-year-old Dror Orr, thought to be alive at one point, was actually killed on October 7th, along with his wife. His 2 children, also abducted, were released in the week-long ceasefire in November. Israel says militants still hold around 100 living hostages and the remains of more than 30 others. Meantime, tonight, growing pressure on Israeli defense forces to answer questions about a deadly strike that claimed the lives of 11 children who were playing at a refugee camp in Gaza. That includes 10-year-old Shahid Tallah, pictured right here. Shahid and 10 other children were killed 2 weeks ago, and without any indication as to why. I do want to warn you, these images are disturbing. When the attack happened, those kids were playing at a foosball table. An analysis of the site of the attack, according to CNN sources, says the evidence points to it being from an Israeli precision-guided munition. But the IDF continues to deny involvement, saying they have no record of an Israeli strike at that time. The April jobs report out today shows the unemployment rate ticked up to 3.9%, but remains near a 50-year low, leaving some uncertainty as to how the Fed will answer a tightening labor market at their next meeting in June. Some forecasters think today's numbers could be a positive sign for over the summer. And national correspondent Atra El-Nashar breaks down why.
April's jobs report is bringing sighs of relief for those worried about an overheating economy. A so-called Goldilocks scenario is looking more and more likely, where the U.S. can make it out of this period of high inflation without triggering a recession. For that to happen, the red-hot job market has to cool, but do it gradually. The latest jobs report from the Labor Department shows unemployment ticked up to 3.9% as the economy added just 175,000 jobs compared to the past year's monthly average of 242,000.
We continue to see job growth. We continue to see it in a broad-based way, right? It's not just one industry. Particular growth in transportation, warehousing. We saw it in retail trade. We also saw it in healthcare.
As for wages, average hourly earnings rose 7 cents in April, bringing the average hourly wage to $34.75. Wages have risen more than inflation, but for a lot of people, it doesn't feel like it after more than 2 years of the fastest price increases in decades. And a lot of customer-facing businesses, McDonald's, KFC, Starbucks, are seeing business slow down.
We saw unexpected pressures on our occasional customers, more intense than we expected, that impacted their visitation.
Inflation's strain on consumers is top of mind for Federal Reserve officials who just voted to hold interest rates at a 2-decade high.
If you're a person who's living paycheck to paycheck and suddenly all the things you buy, the fundamentals of life go up in price, you are in trouble right away.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell says they recognize the hurt inflicted by the tools they're using to bring inflation down.
We know that it's painful and inconvenient, but the dividends will be paid will be very large, and everyone will share in those dividends.
What is a sure thing is that getting there will take quite a bit more time. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
The teen clothing store Rue 21 is going out of business. The Pittsburgh-based company just announced it is closing all 540 of its stores and has filed for bankruptcy. Rue 21 is around $200 million in debt and just couldn't come back from a prior bankruptcy that was filed back in 2017. The CEO said the COVID pandemic had a big impact on its business. The company has almost 5,000 employees. The United States Air Force has entered a new era of the AI fighter pilot. This is an F-16 fighter jet that was flown last night, controlled by artificial intelligence. Along for the ceremonial ride was Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall. In an hour-long flight, the aircraft raced and performed maneuvers with a human-piloted F-16. The United States military hopes to have an AI warplane fleet of more than 1,000 fighters by the year 2028, not too far away. A nearly 4-year-old federal investigation into rear-view camera problems in certain Teslas is over as of today. NHTSA said the company's recall of around 135,000 Model X and S cars seemed to be reducing the risks. The agency started the probe in 2020 following complaints about broken touchscreens, which can cause a number of safety issues. More electric cars could be eligible for tax credits of up to $7,500 starting next year. Today, the Treasury Department said it is making the rules less strict. The existing regulations promote domestic production by targeting battery materials that come from countries like China. But the changes introduce exceptions for minerals with origins that are hard to trace, like graphite. Well, in your health alert, a recent study on type 2 diabetes shows we still need newer medications that work differently in the body than those currently offered on the market. Medical reporter Liz Bonus explains why.
Hey there, everybody. This new research comes from what's called the GRADE study, or the Glycemia Reduction Approaches in Diabetes. It is one of the longest and largest studies looking at certain combinations of medicine generally used to treat diabetes.
This was a type 2 diabetes study, and whereas most studies are looking at how good the blood sugar control can be, this study was focused on how long the blood sugar control can be maintained.
That is critical to find out, according to diabetes specialist Dr. Robert Cohen of Ohio's UC College of Medicine, because when blood sugar levels stay near normal, people with this illness have far lower future risk for complications such as heart disease and kidney disease. They even have fewer vision problems that lead to blindness.
So the idea was, can we improve the preservation of diabetes control longer?
After comparing several medications for years, researchers discovered those medications we now know as Ozempic or Mounjaro are some of the best at maintaining long-term blood sugar control.
That and insulin itself really did the best job of preserving blood sugar control.
But since we don't know yet for how long, what this study showed us, Dr. Cohen says, is that research now needs to focus not just on drugs to bring down blood sugar levels, but rather
drugs that act on preserving the insulin-producing cells.
Now, the real goal of this study was to help provide information about benefits and risks of these medications. So if you're taking one of these, ask your diabetes educator to break down the specifics of what is best for your own health. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Officials in one Texas city saw their police department falling behind when it comes to officer safety. Just ahead, what they're now doing to catch up. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Sometimes the brightest light can emerge from the darkest moment.
We met Sarah Lee back in 2018, struggling with survivor's guilt and thoughts of suicide. Sarah got on a bike, hoping to purge her demons, to find a path forward again.
That was part of the issue for me, was I wasn't living a life worthy of my friend's sacrifice. Whether you've deployed or not, we all know someone that's died on our behalf. We feel a debt that we can't repay.
Those 4,000 miles on the road led this combat veteran to a bold idea. Maybe not repayment, but something close. waypointvets.org. to help vets rediscover themselves and purpose through adventure trips with other vets, doing difficult, teamwork-oriented activities in places of staggering beauty.
SAPD is asking for more money to install bulletproof glass on their windshields and their side panel windows. That'll be installed on their more than 700 units.
So it'll be a lengthy process?
Lengthy, costly, but worth it to protect officers.
If you remember last year, we had Officer Red Shellquist that was shot through the windshield. We've had several officers that's happened to. Bobby Decker was killed with a bullet going through the windshield off of 181. That's the reason why.
Danny Diaz, president of the San Antonio Police Officers Association, says the other departments already have bulletproof windshields on their units.
Swollen legs and ankles, shortness of breath, just a few of the symptoms of congestive heart failure.
My dad had heart failure and struggle. I learned a lot just seeing him struggle.
Dr. Elena Salmorago Blacher is talking about her late father, Dario. He's a major reason why she now focuses her research on how to get patients with heart failure to better care for themselves. Mindfulness training is a type of meditative therapy that can help you focus and become more aware in a pilot study funded by the NIH.
So we saw that we observed an improvement in several measures.
Now they're 2 years into a larger study, also funded by the NIH.
Basketball star Caitlin Clark makes her professional debut tonight as the WNBA soars in popularity. Ahead, what it's all meant for ticket sales. Caitlin Clark makes her professional debut tonight for the Indiana Fever as the WNBA begins their preseason games. And it's because of rookies like her that demand for the WNBA is up. It is soaring 93% higher when compared to the same time last year. And ticket sales for the Fever, they're 13 times more than where they were last year as well. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for joining us.